going to use my favorite sourdough rustic loaf recipe, and we are going to make little rustic loaves. So come along, let's make some dough. So the first thing that we'll do is we will zero at our scale, make sure it's at 0, and add 250 grams of my active sourdough starter. I fed this about 5 hours ago and it was ready to go. Then I'm adding 700 grams of warm filtered water. I love this tea kettle because you can set it exactly to 100 degrees Fahrenheit and heat it up. Then mix it all together. You want to make sure that you don't have any additional clumps of starter in there. That just makes the process a little bit more clumpy as you continue on. Next, I'm going to add my flour. Now I'm doing 100 grams of flour here. I use King Arthur's flour and I blend the two. So I will typically do 50% bread flour and 50% all-purpose flour. However, I think here I used a little bit more bread flour just to, get rid of the bag, but I do blend the two. That just works really nicely for me. You might feel like you want to use all bread flour or all-purpose flour. Some recipes will also specify if there's a certain flour that you want to use. You just need to make sure that any flour that you use is unbleached. Now here I'm adding in my salt. I use kosher salt and I'm zeroing out my scale, and then I am adding 26 grams of salt here. Some different sourdough recipes will have you add the salt at different times. I mix it in right at the beginning here. Other times you will mix all your dough together and then you will wait 45 minutes, add your salt and more water, and then stretch and fold to combine. I do it all up front and it works really nicely for me. As you progress within your sourdough journey, you will figure out these things that work best for you based on the temperature of the house, the amount of flour that you use. You will need to update and not be precisely married to any sort of recipe because it does depend on a lot of different factors. Now I've mixed it really good with a spoon. Now I'm gonna go in there with my hands. So I do this right by the sink. I wet my hands and then I get in there and kind of knead it all together. You'll see me kind of moving my hand over to the sink. This keeps it from just becoming a sticky mess on my fingers, and it really works great. Your dough might be thick enough that you don't need this wet process, but I do, and this is what I've been doing for the past couple of years. It works well. This whole stirring and then kneading process is about 10 minutes, and then I let it sit for overnight, 10 hours or so, and I take off the covering. I love these shower caps. I use them all the time. And then I do my first round of stretch and fold. So take off the shower cap, wet my hand, do one round of stretch and fold, and then I will put back on the shower cap and wait another 30 or 45 minutes for my next set of stretch and folds. And I will do a total of 4 stretch and folds throughout this entire process. Now I've waited 10 hours overnight. My dough is ready to go. I'm setting out my bannetons. Now, first, you could do them with the liners in or without the liners. I'm doing with the liners in for this round. So I am going to put the liners in there and then dust them with flour. That keeps from sticking, and then it also allows for a little bit more decorative of a top when I use the bread lame on them later. So I will put on all of the filters or all the covers there, then I will do the flour and I will just move it around with my hand. Now I significantly sped up the next process and I didn't show you all 6 of them, but I dumped out my dough and divided it into 6 equal little dough balls. And then I did my shaping process for each one of those individual dough balls and put it into the mini bread bowls. You know, I am just not exceptionally precise when it comes to these things. The gram measurement on the front end, 100%, but not this. So what I did is I just eyeballed it, and then you'll see me stretching out the dough. As I shape my larger loaves, I will shape my smaller loaves in the same fashion. So spreading the dough out, folding it over, wrapping it up, and then creating that tension with the dough, and then I'm going to put it into the banneton basket. And I will repeat this process for all 5 loaves. I have been baking sourdough for about the past 3 years, so I will link all of the items that I use in the description here. I love my scale, I love my kettle. These mini banneton baskets are so cute. But you know, I don't use them all of the time. They're kind of like a specialty item, but if you do want to make the minis, they're a great thing to pick up. So I will link all of the items that I did use in this video, of course, in the description. And when you do shop for any sourdough items using my links, of course, my channel benefits from that with no obligation from you. So I always appreciate your support. And here are my shower caps that I love. I love these shower caps. I use them for absolutely everything beyond just sourdough baking. So after I cover up all 6 of my mini loaves, I'm going to leave them out on the counter and I'm going to let them sit and proof there for about 3 hours. After that, I'm going to go ahead and place them in the fridge. I let them sit there for about 2 hours. Now I've got our first one out of the fridge. I take these out one at a time. You want them to stay cool so they're easier to decorate with the bread lame. So I'm taking it out of my banneton basket, you'll see here. I put them on some parchment paper because I am going to do 2 different bread bowls on my sling here in my Dutch oven. I am using a smaller Dutch oven for this one. I have a larger one, but I decided to use the smaller one for this one. So instead of doing 3, I'm doing 2 from the baking process. So you'll see me shape them with with the bread lame. You'll see me decorate them on the different parchment paper. And then I will do the next one, and I will put them side by side on the bread lame. And then I will put the bread lame in the preheated Dutch oven. It is time to get our first two mini loaves into our Dutch oven. So I've preheated the oven to 500. I've let the the Dutch oven preheat in there. Now I've put my bread sling and I've put the dough in there. I've let it bake for 22 minutes. Now I have decreased the oven temperature to 425, and I am baking for another 10 minutes with the lid off, and this will finish up the baking process. And I repeated this several times because I have 6 mini loaves that I am cooking. So I used that same Dutch oven, preheated it, did the same whole process, put it in for 22 minutes, took off the lid of the Dutch oven, put it in for another 10 minutes, and then when they are finished, I take them out on the bread lame, and I will let them cool on my cooling rack over there. Now these are so cute. You could make these into soup bowls if you wanted for like a fancy kind of meal, or you can just eat them for breakfast or lunch or whatever. It just makes gorgeous small mini loaves that are just kind of a treat to have, and they also make just little great gifts. Thanks for watching on this quick tutorial on using mini loaves. Subscribe and follow along for more sourdough recipes.